All right, welcome in to Sportswrap OT, a very special edition of Sportswrap OT. We're joined by a very special guest. I'm Brian Parsons, along with Jeff Snyder, and we are joined by one of the newest members of the Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, Harry Minium. Harry, thanks for coming in.
I really appreciate this chance to come here and talk about my least favorite subject of all time.
Well, we're talking about a topic that comes up a lot. People always ask, a lot of times will ask, why doesn't Hampton Roads have a major league professional sports franchise? And we've had some dalliances with some people and some teams, but it's never come to fruition. Harry, you've been at the forefront for a lot of this throughout the decades at the Virginian Pilot as one of the main writers there, and now you work for Old Dominion. But you've seen it firsthand. I
have seen it firsthand, and in many of these cases, I think the area was large enough to support a professional sports team. I think an NBA team, I think, here would still work, even though our population is not as large as most NBA markets. But it's just the fragmentation of the region, the separation of city and counties, which we can get into, where in Virginia, if you're a city, you're separate from the county. So when Charlotte annexes land from Mecklenburg County, Mecklenburg doesn't care, and that gives Charlotte the resources. Actually, Charlotte and Mecklenburg County combined to build an arena and an NFL stadium. Here you have a little Norfolk surrounded by, Virginia Beach mostly, and they don't have the wherewithal to do it by themselves. But Virginia Beach, which used to be a county but became a city to fend off annexation, they don't want anything to do with building a facility in Norfolk, nor does Norfolk want anything to do with building a facility in Virginia Beach. It's really screwed up Virginia for, since it was enacted in 1870, the separation of city and counties.
So the cities are independent of the counties, and it's the only state in the United States that applies. There are a couple of other instances where Baltimore and Baltimore County are
St.
separate,
Louis.
and St. Louis are the two big ones. But we are the only one. So a lot of people that are from, like Jeff, you're from Ohio.
Yes.
So I bet when you came here, you probably thought this is. What's with the counties? What's going on?
Yeah, I had no idea. It was crazy. And then there's a James City County. That really confused me.
And it's it's and you wonder, like, back in the 60s when Virginia Beach was annexing the counties, what if Norfolk was able to annex most of those counties, and Virginia Beach would be just like the strip, the resort strip, and Norfolk would be a bigger city.
In their first and only annexation suit against Princess Anne County, which is what Virginia Beach used to be, Norfolk asked for land heading almost out the town center and the Lynn Haven River. And back then you had to go to court to annex land, and the annexation court had a guy named Kellum on there.
Yes.
And so they wound up getting, I think, 19 square miles, just the bare minimum of what they should have gotten. And they were forbidden by law to annex for 5 more years. In the meantime, little city of Virginia Beach, little town of Virginia Beach merges with Princess Anne County, and Norfolk can no longer annex. Chesapeake merged with the city of South Norfolk. Portsmouth can no longer annex. So
we've made our bed, and
Yes.
we're laying in it. And regional cooperation has been a serious issue when it comes to this. But one of our first topics that we're going to talk about is, in the mid-'80s, Paul Sawyer from Norfolk was the owner of Richmond Raceway at the State Fairgrounds. And he was a very prominent figure, a very intimidating presence to be around. I don't know if you ever interviewed Paul Sawyer, but just being in his presence was intimidating. He was a man's man from a different era, cut from the John Wayne mold of, he was a scary guy.
Yeah, he was.
Was it the Chinese corner or the Chinese checkers or something like that? The raceway that's at Janif now. And so anyway, he was looking to move the track from the half-mile track in Richmond to Isle of Wight County and a super speedway.
Wow.
With regional cooperation amongst the cities. Harry, do you remember this one?
Oh, yeah. I was covering that. I was actually covering Virginia Tech football and basketball at the time, but I would be pulled off that to cover this. And the region did a really nice job. I think it was 8 or 9 jurisdictions got together and decided they would fund $20 million, which is, as Jeff was saying earlier, what's that in now dollars? It's probably $100 million. But anyway, really a modest investment from the cities and counties, given that they were going to be paid back. And everything was going fine and hunky-dory, but someone insisted that Paul Sawyer have written guarantees from NASCAR that the races would be here forever.
NASCAR didn't do that.
They didn't do that for anyone. And
they didn't do that for Talladega and Daytona.
Yes. And by the way, the races are still in Richmond all these years later.
Right, that's right.
But people, in Virginia Beach and some in Norfolk got cold feet. It was Paul Frame, former Mayor Paul Frame, who's a hero of many of these sports efforts, said, we blew it. He wasn't mayor then. He was, I think, on city council. He says, we blew it. That would have been such a great thing. It would have been such a great thing for Chesapeake, all those hotels at Greenbrier. Such a great thing for Virginia Beach. If you're coming to Isle of Wight County to watch a NASCAR race, are you going to stay at a Motel 6 in Smithfield, or are you going to go to the ocean?
Right.
That would have brought so much money to this area.
So when you say super speedway, are we talking like a Daytona, Talladega kind of a thing, or are we just talking a track over a mile?
The number I remember was 1.7.
Yeah.
1.75. Okay. So that would be a unique.
That would be unique.
A very unique track, much like Richmond is now at 3/4 of a mile.
Yeah. So that's why Richmond did that kickstart their kind of redevelopment from the Fairground Speedway into what it is today.
He had no choice, So he said, "Well, I'm going to take my money and go to Richmond," and he bought the property, like you said, and he expanded it himself. So
it's pretty interesting too. My brother-in-law George Turner is friends with Paul's sons, Wayne and Billy, and he had early 2000s, and he had called me and goes, hey, I'm talking to the Sawyer boys, and they told me that Paul's selling the track. He's selling it to NASCAR. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, $275 million, cold, clean cash. And I was like, I handed the phone to Bruce. And I was like, Bruce, you take this call. You deal with this. And so Bruce was on the phone with him for like 15 minutes. And then Bruce called somebody else that he kind of knew in NASCAR to kind of double confirm. Maybe he just called the other Sawyer brother. I don't know, to get the double confirmation. But Bruce went on the air with it. And then I actually remember the pilot gave attribution to Bruce, because Bruce actually broke that story that he sold the track to NASCAR, $275 million cash.
Did Bruce ever give attribution to us? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, he did. all the time. We have also here. So the NASCAR thing didn't work out. We're going to fast forward to 1996. And that was when a fellow by the name of George Shin.
Let's go back a year.
Okay.
Let's go back a year. Lonnie Gleiberman. You remember that
the
name?
1995 Forrest Gregg and the Chesapeake Bay Pirates? Is that what they were going to be? It was.
I don't remember what their name was.
I think that's what it was. It was the Canadian Football League was going to come to Foreman Field.
Yes.
Lonnie Gleiberman, Forrest Gregg, and the quarterback was I forgot who the quarterback was. It was a guy. They had a whole little team going on there.
And it wouldn't have worked long term. No. But this, what it was viewed as, it was a chance for Virginia Beach and Norfolk to get together and cooperate. It was, okay, this is a test run. They asked Virginia Beach and Norfolk to make some improvements to Foreman Field, minimal improvements, and they turned them down. And they turned them down in a nasty way. They did this email to them, and then we ran it on our front page saying, "Hey, you're small time. We're waiting for Major League Sports," and
Baltimore had a team.
Yes,
and that was drawing 40,000 a game.
It would have been a cool experience for a few years. Eventually, the American teams all died, but I think it would have been really cool, and it would have given us a sense of identity here. That we still lack. So.
Absolutely. So failed NASCAR Cup Series Speedway, Canadian Football League, and Lonnie Gleiberman and Forrest Gregg was going to be the coach. Jeff, he was a legend, Forrest Gregg.
Yeah. Yes.
So then in 1996, there's a fellow by the name of George Shin that kind of gets into the picture here, and George Shin was the owner of the Charlotte Hornets of the NBA. They became an expansion team in 1988. They played at the Charlotte Coliseum. They got 24,000 people a game. They sold out every single game.
Yeah.
He wanted to bring an NHL expansion team to Hampton Roads, and he had a name picked out and everything. It was going to be the Hampton Roads Rhinos. There's George Shin. He initially wanted to put an NHL team in Raleigh, which you think the alliteration, the Raleigh Rhinos.
Yeah,
that failed. Howard Kalmanos ended up moving the Hartford Whalers to Raleigh instead. So then he became. Then there was the Hampton Roads Rhinos as an expansion team. There was a season ticket campaign. Harry, how close, how realistic, how real was this?
Never had a chance. Never had a chance. I had a close friend who was a sports writer. I won't mention his name, who knew Gary Bettman. And Gary Bettman, George Shinn had problems.
Yes.
Years, it all emerged years later. Well, they knew about the problems then. And after George left, with Paul Frame and others, the New York offices, after doing a presentation, he said, guys, that was a nice presentation, but they'll never get a franchise with that owner. So this is an effort where the region really failed. We did. We were supposed to have a regionally built arena that would be in downtown Norfolk.
The location, by the way, to my understanding, would have been where the old Howard Johnson or the old Holiday Inn Hotel across the street from Scope.
I think that's correct. Yeah,
that hotel there, the Triangle Hotel, the old hotel that used to be a nice hotel back in the day.
$143 million arena deal. It would have been a nice arena. They started a season ticket campaign, a luxury suite campaign, which bombed. Mainly, I think, because leaders in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and other places indicated they weren't really behind this. We had a 10,000 goal for season tickets. They sold 5160. We only sold 40 luxury suites out of the 80. Had no chance. So, but I tell you, the Rhinos, they live online. It was a unique name.
It was.
God, what an ugly logo. It was just a terrible logo.
And
very 90s.
The NHL did expand by 4 teams, and those expansion teams were the Nashville Predators, the Atlanta Thrashers, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Minnesota Wild. Now, the interesting thing is that.
And by the way, Hartford was always going to move to Raleigh. That was preordained. So
you look at Raleigh at this time. Raleigh gets a team. Nashville gets a team. Columbus gets a team. Norfolk was in the ECHL with all of those markets at the same time. Nashville, Columbus, Raleigh, and Norfolk were all in the ECHL at the same time. Norfolk outdrew them. Norfolk was the hottest draw in the ECHL at the time.
Of course, the NHL and the ECHL are completely different animals.
Absolutely.
It was $5 to go to an Admirals game. When it came, I'm in high school, and it's, what do you want to do on a Friday night? I don't know. Let's go see a movie for $5 or go see a hockey game for $5. And a lot of people did that.
And the hockey games are more fun with John Brophy as head coach.
It was an amazing time. And it was also around that time when the whole Rhinos thing was going on. For some reason, the city of Norfolk was just putting the screws on Paige Johnson and Mark Garcia, who had bought the Admirals from Blake Cullen for $2.5 million. Blake Cullen spent $25,000 to buy the Admirals. He almost got it for free, but then something went on and he ended up having to pay $25,000. So he sells it to Paige Johnson and Mark Garcia for $2.5 million. Around the same time, the city is saying, we're not going to give you a lease unless you move up to the American Hockey League.
Paul Frame is
and that was like a $1 million expansion fee for that.
It was. Paul Frame's a great guy. I love Paul. Paul did a lot of wonderful things in Norfolk. He made a mistake there. He just did not understand hockey. Moving up to the AHL was the worst thing that could have happened to this market. It killed the East Coast Hockey League. It really, Richmond and Roanoke, I think, went out of business because there was no John Brophy, no Admirals to play against. He just wanted us to be at the highest level possible, thinking that would impress the NHL. When the NHL didn't care, they cared about market. They don't care how you drew the AHL.
No, you don't see AHL teams.
No.
The markets go.
And I'll use Cleveland as an example. We draw probably better than anybody else in the AHL. They've never even considered it.
Yes.
We're talking like over 10,000 a game for the Cleveland AHL team.
Yeah.
Big numbers.
Yeah.
So it's pretty funny. So Johnson and Garcia are kind of put in a tough little spot here when being forced to make the move.
I love Paige and I love Mark. They were also difficult to deal with. There was a lot of give and take on both sides. But you're right. The position they were put in was, and it wasn't immediate. It happened sometime later, but it was an untenable position.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, okay, so you're in the AHL. You don't have to pay the salary for the players anymore. You don't have to pay for the coach anymore, but there are still different operating expenses. And, the attendance really dived the first couple of years of the AHL.
And has never recovered.
The 2012, though.
Well, yeah, that one season. The
championship
season.
And the Tampa Bay Lightning, a lot of people kind of, gravitated towards it. But then
Yeah.
You know, the irony is, and they go back to the ECHL, and then the fans are like the opposite of what they were when we went to. Then they were complaining that, we don't want to go to the ECHL. When they were complaining back then, they didn't want to go to the AHL. It's just.
Of course, ECHL isn't what it was.
No. The AHL was a far superior product on the ice.
Yes.
It was very good. And Brophy, you back me up on this area. I've always said I feel like John Brophy was the most recognizable sports figure in Hampton Roads at the time.
Oh my gosh, without a doubt, completely. Yes.
He was a draw.
Yes.
I mean, Jeff, he got arrested multiple times after games.
True hockey guy.
He would make the players do sprints after a game on the ice while people are still in the stands.
Oh, like Herb Brooks and Miracle, like that kind of thing.
Sometimes after a win, if they didn't play hard enough. I was once at a practice with John, and I was talking with some of the Russian. He had that championship season. He had 4 Russians and a Ukrainian on the team. 2 of them are dead now, by the way. It's really sad. But,
was that the 98 team?
yes.
Yeah.
So he sees me talking to him, and he thinks that I'm talking to them about him, and he comes over and he starts cussing at me and waving a stick at me, saying, "I'm going to knock your bleeping head off." And I stood up and I said, "John, go ahead and knock my bleeping head off, and you'll go to jail. I'll have to write a story. Just put the stick down and let's talk." And
It's a good thing he didn't have a hacksaw blade in his hand. I know he attacked somebody with a hacksaw blade once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was a wild guy. And the movie Slapshot, that character is loosely based. His name is Brophy. It's loosely based on John Brophy, the Johnstown Chiefs.
Yes.
yes.
And that 98 Admirals team, by the way, this is a little interesting side note, not to get too sidetracked. The goalie was Sebastian Charpentier from Russia, and he was amazing. And the Admirals were the 16th seed in the playoffs. They needed to win like their weekend final series just to qualify for the playoffs.
I was on that series. It was a road series too. I was with them, and so I'm getting goosebumps remembering that. That was just an amazing season. The way they won.
It was so much fun. And then in the series against Roanoke, Brophy got into a brawl with referees and players.
The coach, Frank Anzalone, shoved the coach, and then the great goaltender for Roanoke, came over and shoved Brophy. So you know what happens.
Well, I've got it on video. I was there. Saw the whole thing. Brophy went nuts.
Everyone gets suspended, including the goalie.
Brophy got suspended.
Yes.
He felt like the other guys didn't need to be suspended. But I mean, this is how big the Admirals were back then. We took, when the series clincher against Roanoke, I mean, we went up with the satellite truck. We're doing live shots in Roanoke covering hockey. Crazy, I just can't imagine.
And there were 500 or 1,000 Admiral fans there. Everywhere I went with that team, from Johnstown, everywhere, Columbus, Ohio, there were 10, 15 Admirals fans here. They were such loyal fans.
They really were, and it's such a shame that the last ECHL Admirals game was played at Chilled Ponds. Arc Ice, I think it might have been called back then.
Yeah.
Because the scope was, the tattoo was in town. The Admirals have always been second-class citizens, always. Even when they were in the AHL, they had to play a playoff game in Richmond one year because of the tattoo. The tattoo. Norfolk loves that tattoo.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been. I hear it's a great event.
I've never been either, but my goodness, it kicks the main tenants out all the time.
I had enough bagpipes in college. I don't need to go to that.
So the NHL says no to the Rhinos. Jeff, if we can cue up the
sure.
story.
Hold on. Why did they turn us down? Here's their statement. East Coast location, lack of political unity, relatively small size of market, too close to the Washington Caps.
Ooh.
Lack of political unity. They said it out loud.
And I'm surprised the lack of corporate dollars wasn't on that list as well, because we are lacking in that department. Even back then, since then we've lost some Fortune 500 companies.
Norfolk Southern.
Yeah. The Ford plant, well, not the Fortune, but that was a big lucrative job for a lot of people. And that closed
Smithfield Foods being sold to China, which is that's greatly lessened what they do for the area and the region. Anheuser-Busch being bought by a
InBev.
Yes, and that they do less here than they used to. So
what we're going to show now, Harry, is Bruce Rader doing a live shot with George Shen when it was discovered that we were not going to get the team.
Okay. I haven't seen this.
In theory.
There it is.
We aggressively pursue an existing team because I want to prove them wrong that they made a mistake in not selecting this market. And our goal is to try to get an existing team to relocate to the Hampton Roads area. And we think we're going to be very successful in accomplishing that goal.
Which teams could you perhaps go after, and how much will it cost to buy a team?
Bruce, I don't know the answer to either one of those questions. Obviously, we've got to do a lot of due diligence, and it would be very difficult for us to keep the media posted on how we're doing, but for the simple reason that it could mess up a deal if we're talking with a particular market or area.
But Mr.
So
Shin,
we have to be very confidential about how we handle that quest.
but if the NHL owners aren't impressed with our area, could they perhaps try and block you if you were to buy a team and bring it to Hampton Roads, or do you try to resell them?
Well, I don't think they would do that. I think that one of the positives we had was that they were
expansion
very
fee back then,
impressed
by the
with
way, was
us as
$80
an
million.
owner. They were not with the market,
is it
and
now?
that
650 was Seattle
there's
Kraken.
ways that we feel like we can pursue this thing in the future and sell that. And if you recall, there was one owner that made a comment
John
right
Hester?
after. He was so impressed with our
Paul Frame?
presentation
Yeah.
that he was considering moving his team there.
Rick Haro, Mr. Shin, a consultant, has helped Cincinnati and Detroit fund new stadiums. He helped Miami land an NBA team and brought together regionalism in Oklahoma City, and they are still in the running for a franchise. Do you think an outsider like Rick Haro can help bring about regionalism in Hampton Roads, and that would help you if you decide to buy a team and bring it here to put all the pieces together as far as our region is concerned?
Well, obviously, you need to have unity. It's important for the entire area to get together, and I don't know what it's going to take at this point. As I said, we've got to do a lot of due diligence, and we've got to do our homework before we pursue our goal of getting a team, and we think we'll be in a better position than anybody to do that. We made a very, very positive presentation at the
Now
owners
he's
meeting.
kind of talking in circles here.
They knew
I
who.
understand there was no real effort made because he understood there was no chance. So
Yeah, right. Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. So back then, the expansion fee was $80 million. Now, the latest NHL expansion was the Seattle Kraken, and that was $650 million, which begs the question to me: who in the world, who is going local money? There's nobody in this market that is going to pony up that kind of money.
I don't think there's anyone who is worth that much money.
And who is going to come in from the outside and gamble on this? This market that hasn't proven it can do this.
Well, I don't know his name, but a billionaire gambled on a casino in Norfolk. So you never know. But they're right. You're right. There are not a lot of people with that kind of money in this region. But I think the thing that we'll go through this, we'll get it more into Paul Frame. But what we're really lacking now is a regional champion, someone who's out there, who speaks to the region. Paul Frame was, when he was mayor of Norfolk, someone did a poll and people in Virginia Beach felt like he spoke for them when he was speaking about regional matters. Paul's in his 70s now. He retired as mayor years ago, and no one's really stepped up to fill that void. So, we have no chance of getting a major sports franchise anytime in the future. So,
even MLS is out of reach, something like that you would be considered kind of maybe lower tier, but not anymore. So 2002, we're going to fast forward to 2002. We're going to go a few years into the future there after the Rhinos experiment. And guess who's in the picture again? That would be none other than George Shinn.
Oh, boy.
And now he's fallen out of favor with the people in Charlotte. The team hadn't even been there that long. He went from 24,000 a game in attendance to half that. The city turned on him. There was some controversy, some lawsuits, something going on. And so he looked to relocate the Hornets. And lo and behold, he looked in his Rolodex and he said, let me call my buddy Paul Frame. And Norfolk, what do you think?
We came very close to getting a team. We came very close. Louisville and a couple of other, Las Vegas, were our primary combatants for a long time.
It ended up going to New Orleans.
It did. They went to New Orleans. But New Orleans came into it late, very late. So Regina Williams and Paul Frame, they negotiated a really good, a smart, fair $228 million arena deal, 18,500 seats. The problem was it would take 2 years to construct. Of course, if they'd had Steve Ballard do it, it would have taken them 6 months. But
Did they talk about playing at the TED or at ODU? Was that on the table?
They did, but it only seats 8,500, and scope which was in terrible condition back then. 10,000 seats. They were going to lose $18-20 million a year. So, but they were fine with that because the city had offered them a really good deal, and this was still a good market at that time. And they were, I was talking with a lot of people with the Hampton Roads partnership and with Paul Frame a lot off the record, and I had a friend who was who covered the Hornets for the Observer, who was also talking to people. He got very close to a handshake deal. And then New Orleans comes in, and they have an existing arena which they are going to renovate. Yeah, the market sucks. It's a bad market. It's an oversaturated market with LSU up the road, with the Saints, the Sugar Bowl, all these other things. And there are only 900,000 people in that metro area still now.
Unbelievable.
And they've not drawn well, and they've not done. I mean, that's one of the least successful NBA franchises. But they were going to, as George Shinn called Paul Frame, and I quoted Paul saying this, they're offering us so much money we can't say no. So we lost. And I think that was our last real chance we ever had at major sports. Who knows what that would have done for the region and for regional growth. We have an NBA team here, and, a lot of people say, well, professional sports, they don't pay off. And in tax dollars, they really don't, immediate tax dollars. But how many, is it 44, 48 home games?
Yeah. So, exactly.
And a new arena, which would bring all kinds of other events and things here, which we desperately need. And it might have changed the trajectory of this market. Since then, after that happened, our population began to fall for about 5 or 6 years. It fell about 100,000 while all these other metropolitan areas were growing. And, there are a lot of different reasons for that. And this this wouldn't have transformed the area by itself, but man, it could have been the starting point of something pretty spectacular.
Richmond's going to catch us.
Richmond is close to us. Yes.
They used to not be.
Yes.
Now they are very close.
So do we want to go through some demographic information right now?
Let's do it.
All right. So in 1990, Hampton Roads had 1.4 million people, almost 1.5, 27th largest metropolitan area in the country. In 2024, 1.7, 37th largest in the country.
Wow.
Yes. San Antonio's gone from 1.3 million to 2.7. Las Vegas from 852,000 to 2.4. Charlotte from 1.1 thousand to 2.8 thousand.
That's
2.8 million.
Charlotte and Raleigh and Nashville have got to be the three.
Yeah. Austin from 846,000 to 2.3 million. Nashville 985,000 to 2.1 million. Raleigh 855,000 to 1.5. We're still bigger than them on paper, but with Greensboro, they really have a much bigger draw there.
And just go there and tell me.
Yeah, they've just more money there.
Yeah.
Richmond 865,000, almost 1.4 million now. Wow. They're going to catch us.
They're going to catch us. Richmond's going to catch us.
Jacksonville 906,000, 1.8 million. So you look now at we're not getting a major sports team. That's just it almost doesn't need to be said because the population figures show we're not growing fast enough to do that. And although our growth has picked up in recent years, it's just not fast enough.
So we missed out on a NASCAR Super Speedway. We missed out on the Canadian Football League. We missed out on the NHL. We missed out on the NBA. George Shinn, nice knowing you. He's not in the picture anymore. And then a few years later, the Montreal Expos are in turmoil, and they don't know what to do. They need to get out of Montreal because things aren't working out there.
And this was our finest hour as a region. It was 2003, 2004. The region really did come together for this. You got Myra Obendorf with a batting helmet on with paint, doing a promotional for, everyone's behind this. I mean, Will Summerdike and Jason Osborne, I think they're both from Virginia Beach. Mm-hmm. They work downtown. They put together Norfolk Baseball Company. They sold 10,000 season tickets, 92 luxury suites. Not bad.
Who was the money guy? It was the sandwich guy. The guy that had the machines with the sandwiches.
No.
Who you know what I'm talking about?
No, but I will tell you that Joe Morgan was would have been part of the ownership group.
That Stewart, was it Stewart Sandwiches? The guy that used to own that, I think, was also a money guy.
I don't know who it was. I just know that Joe Morgan was behind the scenes working for the region.
Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Like of the Big Red Machine, Joe Morgan? Okay.
Okay. Hall of Famer Joe Morgan.
Interesting. So that
They had a great plan. They were going to expand Harbor Park temporarily. Oh, just ask Oakland and Tampa Bay about that. I mean, one's averaging 8,000, one's averaging 9,000.
yeah, I did. I looked it up just out of curiosity, morbid curiosity.
Would have built a 40,000 seat stadium at Harbor Park in place of which I'd much rather have than a casino. It was, I don't know. Do you remember that? Even the manhole covers covered with stuff.
We believe.
We believe. That's right. It was all over the place. And we thought we had an ace in the hole because Angelos, the Baltimore Orioles owner, said he would never allow a team in Washington, and then he gave up.
Well, they negotiated.
Yeah,
They got a nice little chunk of the TV money. I mean, and by a little, I mean all of it.
I personally just don't think Major League Baseball would have been sustainable here.
Probably not.
Because around that time, I had a joke around that time. So around that same time, Major League Baseball was talking about the possibility of the Minnesota Twins and other underperforming teams literally contracting.
They were going to contract the Expos and the Twins.
So my joke was, yeah, we're going to get the Expos, and then the first thing they're going to do is contract the team. We're not going to have the team. Because, 81 baseball dates, and look at the prices now. I mean, baseball used to be the great American bargain. You can get in for $5. I mean, maybe you can on StubHub for a terrible game.
You still can, depending on the market.
Yeah, I'd like to try Miami.
Yeah, true.
The Marlins, by the way, had a quick dalliance with Will and Jason after that, and it was quick enough that the Miami Herald called me and asked me about it, and I wrote a story about it. But that was very quick, and I mean they're averaging 11,000 per game now. So the Orioles averaged 33,000, almost 34,000, 12th in Major League Baseball in 2004. Now it is 23,606, 22nd in Major League Baseball. So what he said was true. I mean, Washington's a huge market, 6 million people. They deserve the team, no doubt about it.
They did, but before they got the Expos, it was an Orioles town. There was no doubt about it. I mean, all of my friends from Northern Virginia that grew up there, they were Orioles fans, and when they did the national anthem at Redskins games, and they do the just like for the Orioles.
Yeah.
But so two teams up there, and they had to negotiate Angelos and with the Masson and the television and the territorial rights and everything that came along with that.
And, Washington had been starved for baseball for a very long time because the second iteration of the Senators had left in 1970. They went to Minnesota, I believe.
One went to Texas and one went to Minnesota.
I can't remember which one it was, but they were starved for baseball. So that was kind of a no-brainer.
Ted Williams was the manager.
And the region up there has grown. I mean, it's just a huge region.
And we're stagnating.
Yeah.
We're just kind of
we're growing now, and I'll say there's some we still Norfolk and Virginia Beach still go after each other more than they should be. What we should be doing as a region, we're doing a better job now, is going after companies in other cities.
Yes,
for so many years they just went after each other.
I know,
and that's but there's some people working regionally now who are trying to solve that. Here's a little plug for my employer, Old Dominion University. A lot of people in our economics and other departments are working with regional entities to try to make the most of our assets. We started a maritime school, so there are a lot of things happening, but we're not going to catch Tampa Bay and these other regions in population anytime soon. It's going to take a long time.
I think, you look at areas of growth. I think you've got to look at like southern Chesapeake and parts of Suffolk would be your areas of growth here.
But that's one of the problems with this region. If you look at it, we have the ocean, too close to us, if you know what I mean, too close to the economic center of this region will always be Norfolk. If you look at the roads all come into Norfolk and Portsmouth. And by the way, I was a resident of Virginia Beach for a long time, so I can say this. Virginia Beach and Chesapeake, they live off Norfolk. We have they live off the ports and they live off the Navy,
Yeah, well, the central business district of the area is downtown Norfolk.
Yeah.
The universities are in Norfolk.
Yeah.
The major employers are in Norfolk.
Well,
No cultural activities are in Norfolk.
Well, the non-tax paying industries here, the port. I mean, that's such an economic driver for this area, and the naval bases. You go out to Lynn Haven Business Park and other places in Virginia Beach. There are nothing but defense contractors out there, and they're there because of the Norfolk Naval Base, which gives Norfolk no tax money. So
You're right. Yeah. And it's some of this prime real estate on the East Coast.
yes,
and
it is.
And it's the state gets no tax money from that. So that's a hindrance.
Yep.
So I want to take you back to the, I think this was the early 2000s. The Norfolk City Council took a trip to Greenville, North Carolina. And I couldn't find, Greenville, South Carolina.
A booming area, by the way.
It is a booming area. But they have no,
Belo Center.
yes, they know they're not a major sports city. I mean, they're too close to Charlotte. They're, University of South Carolina is just right down the road. They know what they are. And I think we need to know who we are. And that is, so they decided they're going to build a multi-purpose arena. Oh, gosh. Opened in 1998. It's called the Bilo Center. Cost $63 million. City Council did a tour of it. And Randy Wright was among those saying this, and Paul Frame were saying we should build this because it's like every year the NCAA tournament is in Greenville. They have great concerts there. They have all these things that we just don't have it. Old Dominion would love to host NCAA regionals here, but we can't because there's no arena. But Norfolk eventually decided, now we're going to pursue major sports. And so they decided not to do this. Big mistake, I think. So
now we're, kind of arena limbo too, whether the city is talking about the $80 million renovation to scope, which when will that take place? I am of an opinion that $80 million is not going to get you much in this day and age as far as a renovation. No. And I think Chrysler Hall is actually first on the list for their renovations, that's kind of got priority over scope. And
they've raised a lot of private capital. A lot of private money has come in I don't think that's reflected on the city's website, but when I was still at the pilot, I heard that they had gotten some major donations for that. So the taxpayers won't have to pay for all of that.
What do you make about this? The Patrick Cavanaugh, the owner of the Admirals, he goes on the Admirals YouTube channel and says one of the most important things for this team is to get a new arena built. And okay, fair. That's a fair statement. But how the basics of the basic questions we have here: who's going to pay for it? Where is it going to go? All of that. He was not available for comment after that.
Yeah, and I'm not available for comment on that either because I know more than I'm supposed to, and I'm sworn to secrecy. So there have been some talks behind the scenes. So, but
would that be the city of Norfolk or elsewhere?
I don't know. I'm not going to say, and I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. So,
okay. So we struck out with the Expos, and then even more recently there was, I don't even know what you would call this, a flirtation. I don't even if we would call it that, but there was Virginia Beach was looking to get an arena built at the oceanfront, and with that they were very confident that they would be able to get the Sacramento Kings to come here, who I guess at the time were they owned by the Maloof brothers. And
oh yeah, that's right, the Maloof brothers.
And that was a whole fiasco in itself. Yes. They ended up selling and building a new arena in Sacramento, but
which you knew they were going to do.
Or move to Seattle. Yes. It was going to be one or the other. And
it was like with the Expos. The Expos were never coming here. I mean, Washington yes, they were never.
Yeah.
I mean, they were never coming here. So.
That's another problem. Like there's always a market or 2 or 5 ahead of us on the list.
Yeah.
So that's why that's another obstacle that we have here.
We get used.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we get played. We get played.
Absolutely. Yes. Every single time.
And it's also the catch-22 of like, oh, we love your market, especially the 2002 Hornets flirtation was, well, we like the market, but Louisville and New Orleans actually already have arenas. We don't. That thing. Yes. The fact that we don't have the arena it doesn't help, and we're just being used as
not even a plan for one.
I mean, that's how Tampa Bay got baseball. They built a stadium. Now it's an awful stadium. It's ugly. It's terrible looking. But have you ever been there?
No, I have not.
It's the worst stadium I've ever been in. It's depressing.
Yeah, it looks it.
It's so horrible. But they have Major League Baseball.
Yeah, they do.
Well, it took them a long time to get that team though after they built that stadium, right?
Yeah, they built the stadium in 1988, and they did not get the raise until 1998.
Yeah, they put the Lightning in there for a couple of years.
Yep. You have the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Yeah, the NHL played there. And there was many teams talked about, the White Sox talked about moving there. The San Francisco Giants had a press conference where they were going to be the Tampa Bay Giants. Can you imagine the San Francisco Giants in Tampa Bay? Could you, a storied franchise like that? There were hard times back then, though. They were playing at Candlestick Park. They, up and down seasons. Attendance was the Candlestick.
That was right before they had signed Barry Bonds, right?
What's the quote? The coldest... what is it? The Mark Twain quote?
I can't remember what it was.
About the coldest winter was the summer in San Francisco or something like that. They were Candlestick Point was very cold for a baseball game.
The coldest I've ever felt was a summer day in San Francisco, something like that.
So, the Sacramento Kings, that wasn't going to happen, right? Where were they? We couldn't even get the funding. Virginia Beach couldn't even secure funding for the arena.
Well, most of that was done behind closed doors. These other efforts were done out in the open. Virginia Beach is a little more secretive. I think they lost some of their tax credits, which they would have needed to have gotten done. But one of the problems with the Virginia Beach arena is that it really didn't include enough parking. I mean, and that was I noticed that. And that anyone thinking of bringing a team here is going to notice that too. A guy I won't take credit for noticing. A guy who develops arenas told me, hey, there's not enough parking there. They're going to have to build, 25
garages,
2,500, 3,000 spaces worth of garages here, which, takes up a lot of land. So no, they weren't going to get the Kings. Sacramento is just a better market. And Seattle's a much better market. So
I remember when Bruce was working that story, and because there was talk about there was going to be a Chinese bank that was going to do the funding for this, among the many things we'd heard. So Bruce is talking to one of his guys, and Bruce is like, what's the name of the bank? And the guy texts back, IDK. I don't know. Well, Bruce didn't know that IDK meant I don't know. So he spent the next 30 minutes researching where, because I can't find IDK Bank. I can't find it. It's nowhere to be found. I was like, oh, that's not what he meant by that. So I think we got the final conclusion here is that it's Harry, it's not happening, is it? We're not getting them. We're not getting it. We're not getting the team.
Shameless plug for my employer. The closest we're going to have to major sports franchise is ODU football and basketball. When we start winning again, the ODU fan base is very deep in Virginia Beach and Chesapeake. This is all we've got, and when it's good, it's pretty good. I mean, Old Dominion football games are a lot of fun.
Yes,
basketball games are a lot of fun. We have the Admirals, we have the Tides, which are a lot of fun. I think that's who we are now. And the difference, Old Dominion has potential to get a lot better in both sports and get a lot bigger. We'll see how that goes.
Does the recent settlement, does that help ODU?
Well, I know this. I know that we're spending the money. We're spending a lot. I wouldn't say compared to UVA and Tech, but we're spending enough NIL money to be competitive.
I've been told that basketball, for example, they're going to, some people want to call them the body bag of games, that they're going to have to take on more of these buy games because of the rev share that's going to have to be shared with the players.
That may or may not be true. I'm not at liberty to say, but
I know. I've seen the schedule. So.
ODU's okay.
Yeah.
So ODU's president has made it clear that we need to compete in the Sun Belt and beyond. So, and he and Woodseal, ODU has a good budget for NIL, and we're focused on football and men's and women's basketball because those are the sports we really need to get better in. We're getting better. And by the way, I'm doing stories on all three teams. All three of them recruited really well, especially the football team. The football team recruited best in re-recruiting its players. It got a lot of players to stay here who had Power 4 offers or would have gotten Power 4 offers. So I think we can be pretty good this fall.
I've been on the hype train for a while. I've said if this is the year, if it's going to happen. There's so much continuity amongst the coaching staffs too, where he's got his offensive coordinator, his defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator are all back for the third year, which is very rare at this level. You have a quarterback coming back. I know he had to re-recruit
two quarterbacks,
Quinn Henikel and Colton Joseph.
The offensive line is old.
We like that.
Yes, we do, and big and deep. Wide receivers, not a lot of experience back, but a lot of size and a lot of talent.
6'3" guys and up that I saw in the spring game. A lot of drops, but I mean, it's spring game. I'm not too worried about that.
Now, our linebackers,
best in the group of five.
Yes.
Literally the best in the group of five.
Yes.
The brothers, Jason Henderson is, it's going to be, that could be good. What do you think about the Norfolk State? What do you think about the buzz of Michael Vick and everything that's going to happen over there?
Well, I covered Michael Vick at Virginia Tech, and this is my way of sort of stalling a little bit because I'm not sure how to answer that question. It's going to be interesting. He's brought them a lot of attention, and he's apparently recruited pretty well. Can Michael Vick coach? We'll find out. So,
it's it's like if you're the coach at like the head coach at South Carolina State and you've devoted your life to this and, to the mastering the coaching game, and you have successful seasons, and you're thinking you see this guy come in with no experience. I mean, they're going to want to beat Michael Vick pretty bad.
Oh yeah, everyone, even if there's no resentment that way, everyone's going to want to beat Michael Vick anyway. So, and by the way, Norfolk State and ODU play in 26 and 27 at ODU.
Very, very cool. And you think ODU against Norfolk State? Oh, Old Dominion must dominate. No, ODU probably, they've played 3 times. One was a pretty decisive win in the FCS playoffs. The other 2, honestly, Norfolk State should have won. They got a field goal at the Horn to win when they played at Norfolk State. That was with Taylor Heineke. I think that was it was right around the Pitt game. It was either right before the Pitt game or.
And by the way, we should have beaten Pitt too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So
and then Norfolk State should have beat Old Dominion in the first game at SB Ballard Stadium.
That's true. They did outplay us that game.
Yeah.
But as often happens when it's an FBS versus FBS, we got some breaks and we made some plays just when we really had to win.
It's crazy that Norfolk State women's basketball is getting Ole Miss and Duke home and home. How in the world does that happen?
I wasn't aware of that. Yeah.
Duke's coming to Joe Eccles Hall. How about that? Well, anyway, on that note, we got about 30 seconds left. Harry, I want to thank you so much for coming in and taking a trip down memory lane to talk about our failure at securing a major league professional sports
team. Let me
team.
spend 10 seconds on Paul Frame. He built high school stadiums in Norfolk. He helped build Harbor Park. He started middle school sports. He got governors Jim Gilmore, George Allen, and Mark Warner all to go to meet Commissioner David Stern. He's decided to get out of the pro sports business when David Stern responded to his yearly Christmas card by saying, "Please stop. It makes me feel bad. I don't have an NBA team for you." So, yeah. Paul's a hero.
When I in college, I worked at the Marriott, and not only do you remember a guy by the name of Horace Ballmer?
Yes.
So Horace Ballmer would always stay at the Norfolk Waterside Marriott. I parked cars, and I would he was with the NBA, and he would always tell me, he's like, "I'm telling you, you're going to get an NBA team here." He goes, "I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm working on it."
He did. He worked on it. Yeah, he did.
He was very confident. I believe he's passed away.
He has.
And but Horace gave me hope that we were going to get a team, and it didn't happen. And I don't think it's going to. So embrace Norfolk State, embrace Hampton University, embrace your high school sports, the Admirals, the Tides.
We still have great sports around here. We still do.
We do.
And ODU.
And of course, Old Dominion, my alma mater as well. All right. For Jeff Snyder, Harry Minium, I'm Brian Parsons. We'll see you next time on Sportswrap OT.